Hi and welcome to VeloGPS. In this video we're featuring Polar's speed and cadence sensors that are compatible with the Polar V650 cycle computer, the V800 watch, as well as a range of mobile applications and devices. We're going to start off by showing you exactly what comes in the box, as well as how to fit the sensors to your bicycle. If you're interested in how to pair the sensors with your V650, then click on the on-screen link for our demonstration video. So let's take a closer look at what comes in the box. Okay, so having emptied out the contents, we're going to start in the middle here with the Polar Bluetooth Smart speed and cadence sensors, and we can tell the difference just by flipping them over and looking on the rear. And here we have speed written, and hopefully on the rear of the second sensor we'll find cadence. There we go. So the sensors are either attached to your front fork for the speed sensor or your rear chainstay for the cadence sensor, and they're held in place via a little rubber mount that stops them from sliding around on the fork or chainstay and holds them nice and securely in place. And the rubber mount itself is attached via a couple of zip ties, so you do get two mounts, one for the speed sensor and one for the cadence sensor. And then moving on to the top, we have a magnet, which is what our cadence sensor will detect. So that magnet attaches to one of your cranks, and as the cranks revolve, it passes by the cadence sensor and registers with it. So it does have an adhesive tab on the rear, or a little foam tab, and it can be secured in place using this adhesive piece of tape, this wrap, that will wrap around your crank and hold the cadence sensor in place. So up in the top right we have a spoke magnet that clamps onto just a single spoke on your front wheel, and again this is what, as your wheel revolves, will register with the speed sensor. And then finally in the bottom right we have our obligatory set of user manuals. Okay, so we're going to kick off by fitting our speed sensor, and the sensor itself has a couple of tabs located just on the bottom edge here, so one here and one here, and these sit nicely into the little openings on the rubber mount. So you just slot the sensor in and then mount the sensor onto your front fork, and then to hold it in place you just need to grab one of the zip ties and just loop it around the back of your fork and then squeeze it through the opening and then tighten it up. Okay, and we'll just tighten it not too tight at this stage, keep it a little bit loose, and do the same with the second zip tie. So to keep the little tabs, the grippy bits of the zip tie on the front edge, seems to keep things as neat as possible. And actually, to make life easy, you can just loop these round the back, pop them through the hole, and then put them on and tighten them up. And that's just a little bit easier to get them in place. Okay, so we're just going to slide that around a bit more before tightening it up. And we're going to move that mount around a little bit. Okay, you then want to grab your wheel magnet. So here we've got the wheel magnet, and the wheel magnet has just a little nut, if we can see it here, a little nut with a Phillips headed screw on the opposite side. So we're just going to undo that, and what you want to do is keep your finger on the back here to prevent the nut from falling out. And once the screw's fully undone, you can just take that out and put it somewhere safe. And then what you want to do is just rotate your wheel around to your spoke and then pop that over the spoke and line it up roughly with your speed sensor. Okay, and then you want to pop the screw back in, trying your best not to drop it. Once it's back in, you can tighten it up again with your screwdriver. There we go. You don't need to over tighten it at this stage, because you might just need to move that up and down to adjust it slightly. And then we're just going to check how that sits with the sensor. So it's maybe just a little bit high, so we're just going to loosen it off and drop it down a bit. So we'll try it again. Okay, so here we have our polar speed sensor mounted to our fork and the associated spoke magnet just to the side here. Now, Polar recommend a gap of around about 4mm between the two, and you'll notice here that we're running closer to a full centimetre, but to be reassured that the magnet is registering on the sensor, you just need to spin the wheel past it a few times and you'll notice that the sensor blinks red, which lets you know that it is picking up the magnet. So being happy with that, we can now finish up by tightening up the cable ties that little bit extra and then trimming off the ends to neaten the whole setup. Okay, so having fitted your speed sensor, we're now going to show you how to fit the cadence sensor, which sits on your rear chainstay on the non-drive side. And a quick little tip that we clearly learnt from fitting the sensor to the front fork was just to get the zip ties in place first, because it's a little bit easier and a little less fiddly. So don't tighten them up fully, just a quick loose attachment there. And we'll do the second one there. Okay, so once those are in place, you then grab your cadence sensor and the associated rubber mount that sits on top of the chainstay. You slot the cadence sensor in, and then what you want to make sure is that you check where the sensor is located before you attach it in relation to where you're going to have that little magnet that will register the crank passes. So you will need to use the little adhesive pad and the adhesive tape to attach the magnet on the rear of your crank and then wrap the tape around to hold it securely in place. Now, another alternative, a nice little trick that we have, is a little button magnet that we've purchased from eBay. It cost a matter of a couple of pounds, and we've had this attached to the bolt on our mountain bike for about 12 months, and it's yet to come off. And even if it did, at £2 it's really not going to cause us any concern. So you'll just hear that as we bring it close to the bolt snap into place. There we go, so that's held nice and securely in place. So what we then need to do is line up the cadence sensor with where that magnet is located on the bolt. So if we just start tipping the sensor over and then pass in the magnet, you'll just notice there that we had a little flash as the magnet went past. So you just need to tip it across, and then once it's in place, what you can do then is just tighten up the zip ties. Not fully, but pretty much. Okay, and then we grab the other zip tie and do the same on the other side. Okay, and then we're just going to rotate the zip ties round just so that they're not flicking on the crank whilst we're demonstrating this. So we've got it seated quite nicely there, and then we'll bring the crank back up. And apologies, it's just flicking on the spokes, but you'll just see there how as the magnet passes by the sensor, it's just registering and that red light is flashing again. So we're happy that it's sitting close enough to the crank, so we can just bring those zip ties back up, seat them neatly, and that one's a little bit stiff, that is now. We've probably done it up too tight already. But we can just pop it back up to the top, and then once you've done that, you can then trim the ends, and we're not going to manage it now, we've done it up too tight ourselves, but you can trim the ends off, and it really isn't a problem being there. Trim the ends off and everything's going to look neat and tidy.